with invasive species, we often just think that they're taking over and they become overabundant.
Right.
And that's the word I choose to use a lot of times. They're just like not team players, right? So they sort of push out other plants that we want there. They've been brought over for whatever reasons, like blackberry was brought over because it was like an erosion control. It was good bird habitat because of the berries. It's aesthetically it was pleasing as well, but we just stopped. Many people, I think, stopped using it for its medicinal qualities as well. So we'll always take the berry, like everyone loves those berries. You can make like cobbler and pie out of it, but also the leaves can be used as teas. And the roots are actually can be tinctured as well. And it's very important, from what I understand, for like diarrhea and like kind of gut health. And a lot of the plants I have in here, the pothos, cleaning the air right now. It's not just the plant doing the work, but the interactions with the soil and the fungi. You really talk about like a plant when it shows up in abundance, perhaps there's a reason for it, right? It sort of signals perhaps that we need that plant for whatever reason. And plant populations, year by year, if you go and observe like the plants in your, nearby park or in your neighborhood, like some years they're there, some years they're not.
Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing a pal of mine from Tacoma, Washington, Michael Yadrick. And we're going to be talking about herbal medicine. We're going to be talking about what's local in the Pacific Northwest that we can use for herbs. So things you might be able to find in your backyard. And even if you're not from the Pacific Northwest, we're going to be talking about a lot of herbs that are considered weeds pretty much everywhere. So things like milk thistle, things like blackberries, things like Japanese knotweed, these are all things that are considered invasive species, so weeds, but they're actually really, really helpful. Things like mullein, chickweed, they grow as weeds, but we can use them for salves and all kinds of fun stuff. Now, the cool part about Michael is he's a certified ecological restoration practitioner, otherwise known as a restoration ecologist. And he runs the native plant nursery for the city of Tacoma. He works in the city of Tacoma, and he's also the host of the Tree Hugger podcast. And he self-describes himself as on Team Tree, which is fun because Michael can be found in Tacoma in many of the parks, figuring out how he can help with the landscape. But not only that, he's really into preserving native plants. And some of them may be a little bit considered weeds and invasive species, but we're here to talk about how cool they can be and how we can use them as medicine. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this podcast. It's Michael and I sitting down and just having a really great chat at his house about herbs. Alrighty, let's get into the podcast. Hey, health junkies. I have Michael Yadrick on today, and because I'm in Tacoma and he's in Tacoma, we decided we just join together and hang out because, he's got a podcast, the Tree Hugger Pod. We're going to talk about that. And today we're just sipping on some tea. Well, he's got coffee, and then he experimented. He told me, full disclosure, this is what, limoncello tea, and you never tried it?
I've never tried it. A friend of mine gave it to me, and I expect it's going to be delicious.
It smells good. Smells good. So we will see about that as we get going here. And yeah.
All right.
This is fun. It's fun to do these in person because I think a lot of times we're doing podcasts across like the country and you don't get to see people. And so sometimes in person there's just a different vibe. So we wanted to bring that to you guys today.
Right. Yeah, I like recording outside a lot, and obviously that's a good fun one too. We started talking about freestyling it or like free range podcasting, but I do feel like, yeah, recording. I feel like you have a worldwide audience as well. I know there's people with accents that are often on the show too, so virtually is probably the only way to go.
With some, but
Unless you want to fly them in from wherever.
That or like podcast travel.
Yeah, when we hit it big.
Yes, yes, we're fledgling podcasters at this point. Sometimes
when I hit it, you're big. I feel like you have a big following. Regular schedule.
Well,
We try. We
Yeah.
try. We're trying to drum up some more folks from Tacoma, by the way. So if you're from Tacoma, let us know. We want to know about this. So today we're talking about plants. We're talking about invasives. I can refresh for sure. Maybe the tea will help me
Yeah,
say things
hopefully.
better. But here's the thing, like, and you probably can back me up on this, is that we we have all these parks
Hmm.
with all these cool plants, and we're trying to rip all the cool plants out and then say we're going to restore the park. But most of us think about restoring a park, don't walk on the ground. We see the signs that say don't walk on,
Oh,
right? Like we're
right.
restoring this. I see prairie a lot in
Okay,
Wisconsin, and
okay,
they'll
I
say
gotcha.
like we're restoring this prairie, don't walk on it. And so kind of cool because they're not really ripping things out, but I don't know
Hmm.
at the same time. So let's tell the folks like in Tacoma, you're taking care of lots of parks over here. You're
Yeah.
trying to beautify the city, trying to figure things out, but you're also an herbalist at the same time now.
Yeah,
And so he's learning about herbs and
yeah,
what is like
that's
incredibly
true.
useful. So tell us a little bit
Right,
more.
right. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about me, I guess. So I'm a certified ecological restoration practitioner, mostly like a have a botany background. I call myself a restoration ecologist. That's my working title. I'm interested in globally like everything team tree, like the street trees as well, the trees in people's yards. Like obviously, we live in an urban forest. It's hard to say, like, we there's actually there's trees around, and so we consider this a forest as well. Um, but often, I think more important to me as well recently has been the restoration of like cultural values as well, and the medicinal qualities of things. And that was it's been a growing interest, kind of a pandemic project, but yeah, just a couple years ago, I started this apprenticeship with a local herbalist. And yeah, I felt like it was really important not just to know about different values of plants for like what holds the soil in place, what provides habitat for certain animals, but how we use it, how we use some of these plants as well. And I'm interested in my own health, and I've had my own health struggles. So I think a lot of plants are yeah, it can be really important. Like we all have to go to the drugstore sometimes, or many of us, not you.
Try not to.
Some of us go to the drugstore sometimes, and I'm not saying that's not important, but I think it is helpful to be autonomous in our healing as well and be able to interact with our environments.
Absolutely, absolutely. And guys, I've seen Michael transform over the last like it's been like 3 years really, where we would have conversations about herbs and in my office, and we'd have different things we were working with for Michael's health. And then all of a sudden he was like, "Hey, I'm working with the herbalist. Try these herbs out that I made myself," which is I mean herbs that he made. He didn't make. Nature made the herbs, the tinctures he made, and so he's got a whole cabinet here at his house, which is really cool. I'm impressed. And so he's talking about a pharmacy, right? And some of us have to go to the pharmacy or drugstore because things happen. We don't have things, but having a cabinet that can cover a lot of your bases. Tell us a little bit what's in that cabinet there, like that you can cover bases.
Ooh,
Because I know there's a ton in there, but like
okay.
what are your like top five go-to herbs for like
Right.
stuff that maybe someone could have in their cabinet? And
Mm,
then we'll talk about how this
yeah.
relates to invasive species
Right.
and things of that nature.
Yeah, so the herbalism I've been kind of getting into, or at least that my teacher, Sarah Butters at Hawthorne and Honey, is a local herbalist in Tacoma. She really teaches the importance of like intuitive herbalism and then bioregional herbalism, right? So using plants that are around us that we find out in the yard or out in the mountains or by the shore of Puget Sound here, as well as using plants, I think from like our ancestral traditions as well, and things that just for some reason we see them and we're sort of drawn to them for whatever reason and not discounting that. So it could be a plant that, we many folks consider invasive,
Mhm.
but also some of these plants, there's kind of there's probably a reason for that you're drawn to that plant for whatever reason. So in my cabinet, woo, there's way more downstairs that you can't, that I haven't shared with you, but there are, I do kind of have problems sleeping sometimes or getting to sleep. So there's things that are a little bit sedative or maybe hypnotic. I think those are the herbal actions. So there's
Whoa, kept going. Vervain.
blue vervain. Yeah, that was gifted to me. We actually don't really find this around too much. There's some hops, right? So interestingly, when you drink alcohol, there's hops in there. You might feel, for some people who drink beverages, hops make you a little sleepy. And this is the version, there's alcohol in here, it's tinctured. So that helps, me get to sleep. Ooh, the forest elixir. I mean, does taste like Christmas, but there's fir needles in here, and then it's mixed with cardamom, cloves, cinnamon, brandy, and honey. And so I think this is really like a more like a immune booster more than anything.
I mean, anything warming,
Yeah.
right, is gonna warm you up. Like if it tastes like Christmas or tastes like pumpkin spice, like if it tastes like Thanksgiving, it's gonna warm you up. But fir needles, I think a lot of people don't realize that they could use fir needles to make
Oh, yeah.
something out of it for your health, which is super cool.
No, you never know. And I didn't, and these things like, when I was properly trained, like in college or whatnot, bringing this up, like I knew conceptually these things were used as food, or people like, oh, you could forage this in theory, but it might poison you or whatever, or it's like, it might be gross. But I think experimentation is important. So the fir needles, yeah, a lot of times you can just pick them right off the tree and just stuff them in your mouth. And yeah, a lot of the times they're high in like vitamin C or sort of other nutrients. This one, the devil, yeah, this is Devil's Club. This is really powerful. I mean, it's essentially like a mythically kind of a heal all, but I do feel like not kind of get a little woo-woo, like it helps with boundaries a lot. And that's what I've heard, because Devil's Club, it's like Aplopanix horridus if you're into the Latin names of things, but it's a very important, at least you find it in the Pacific Northwest or up and down the West Coast into Alaska, that it has these spines on it, very sharp, and it's like you don't want to mess with it. You don't want to like wander through it. Pretty much like you use thick gloves to harvest it. And it's so I think, yeah, having those spines on it sort of indicates that it's good with its own personal boundaries as well, right? So
Like stay away.
yeah.
And it makes sense. It kind of has a club shape to it when you look at how the spines are on it and look at the plant as a whole. Now, what's fun about all of this, and I think for me as a naturopath and having a patient of mine that decides that he wants to go into herbalism, I'm like, this is so exciting. And now he probably knows more than me. So that's what's even cooler. And you're making a tincture of Oregon grapefruit. I'm gonna grab it. Tell folks what Oregon grapefruit is good for.
Oregon grape. So Oregon grape, I first heard about it. I mean, I've known about it for years. It's probably one of the dominant understory plants in the forest here, like along with salal and sword ferns, really. So you see it everywhere. But and it's often used like in landscaping as well. So when you talk about taking care of the parks, like the way we show care here is to plant a lot of native plants like on the edge of the parking lots or whatever. So you see it everywhere, but I know it's heavy in berberine, right? So you often see those like in capsules, right? So I think it's important for like regulating blood sugar, from what I understand, right? I think that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
But I think it's also good for your digestion as well, and kind of your gut health as well. But so we use this is the tincture of the roots.
I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's really cool. Like herbs are impressive when you get them in there and you get them starting to get into the tincture format.
It's important to label them. Yeah, you just saw like the bottom part of it, so you're not really sure what's in there. But these are like strips of the root bark. So essentially, take a knife, clean all the dust and dirt off, and then just scrape and you get this yellow. You really see this very distinctive yellow color.
No, this is great stuff. I mean, Oregon grape, guys, also, like Michael was saying, for blood sugar balance, for helping with microbe balance. So a lot of people are talking about SIBO and microbe issues with the gut, helps with that, brain fog from it. And then it's also it is antimicrobial if someone has an infection. It's used for years and years for infections. But super cool stuff. And there was a lot of talk back in the day about over harvesting it and whatnot, but I
Mhm.
think here, I really don't think we have that problem. I mean, it seems like I see it quite a bit.
There's a
And
lot. We call it a workhorse plant, like it should be there. Like depending on the topography, where you are in the Salish south end of the Salish Sea or the Puget Sound, like depending on which slope you're facing, west or east or north, sometimes you'll see the dominance in the understory change, and it's really fascinating. Interestingly, it's kind of hard to propagate, and really sometimes you can't find it in commercial nurseries. Sometimes there'll be just a glut of it, mostly because there's like this insatiable desire to have it in our landscapes, I think. And so it's just
Mm.
sold out. So think about like going to the grocery store and like, oh, all the toilet paper is gone or whatever, right? And it's kind of the same thing with the nurseries. So that's why I think it's important. Part of my job is to run the native plant nursery for the city as well.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, it's one of those skill sets that I think it's a sort of a lost art to, yeah, growing plants for ourselves.
It is. We
Yeah.
don't think about it because we think about go to the drugstore and pick up the meds, right? Or the doc prescribes the medication, you
Mhm.
go pick it up. But why don't you have in your backyard, on your
Mhm.
counter, in a jar? I want to bring that back to folks. I really think it's
Yeah.
important. And you're kind of working with the city here. I don't know how
Mhm.
far you've gotten because I know we've talked back and forth about it, about
Yeah.
possible chances of people being able to harvest and how
Yeah.
to regulate that in terms of working in the parks
Yeah,
and
the
things of that nature.
regulation. I do feel like regulating harvest. I think a lot of public land managers, they have the best intent to be the best stewards of the land, and but it does, we do live in this kind of this really this settler state. So there are a lot of rules and a lot of displacement of indigenous folks, and so there's a lot of practices that have been like purposely back in the day, and they still carry on today, that really remove people from the land, right? So it's so best intent, however, and we're not trained in it. Like I
Mhm.
got brought up in it, and I was like, I was really into plants, I was really into forests, and I want to be an ecologist, but we never learned how to really use the plants except for, let's say, the bigger economic reasons. Like you drive through the Pacific Northwest, you see like fields or mountains full of like Douglas fir, and that's traditionally been used just for like 2x4s and timber. And we harvest plants for those economic reasons. Or you see like salal in the for greens, you see salal in the floral decorations, but we've never been trained to, or we've lost it, I guess, from all these generations, I think, of moving around from my ancestral tradition from Europe and across the United States. And we finally settled here. We just don't, we've, I think, lost that connection to know how to use the plants for a variety of
I
things.
believe we totally have. And that's why I brought Michael on here. Now, Salau. Let's show folks Salau because I actually don't know what it looks like in my, it's the leaf.
Yeah, it's there's a little bit here. Yeah, it's just this green,
Like
this
the
greenery.
greenery
Yeah.
in your floral regions is Salau.
Mhm.
Interesting because I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's exported. I mean, a lot of them are, yeah, it's, I guess, kind of quote unquote wildcrafted or whatnot, but it's a secondary forest product that we pull out of the forests around here.
Huh.
So, yeah, and some of that too is rose leaf too. So it's a little deceiving, but yeah, there's a little bit of everything in there.
Huh. We just don't even think about it. Like a lot of the different fillers in floral arrangements can actually be made into medicine, can actually
Hmm.
be, like Lily of the Valley we use for
Mm.
things. I mean, there's lots of different things and we don't tend to think about it. But I think one of the cool things about the Pacific Northwest, if you guys have not been here, I highly, highly recommend visiting. We have lots of greenery. And like Michael said, it's a forest. We were driving, for those of you from Tacoma, I was driving down North 30th on the way over to Michael's house. I was just looking at the trees coming over the road, and it's just so beautiful.
Mhm.
But one of the biggest things, and no matter where you live, right, that there's always going to be some life that's living in parks, that's going to be living maybe in your yard. And one of them is like the big invasive species situation. Now, here in the Pacific Northwest, blackberries are kind of like everybody's enemy per se, but blackberries have some really good benefits. But we also have a couple other things. I'm gonna let Michael talk a little bit more about the invasive species
Mm.
that we can use as medicine, but are getting demonized a little bit. And maybe we want to rethink the weeds in our yard, like dandelions and thistles and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. So there are some, yeah, and a couple years ago, there's another pandemic project I've been organizing with this group called Just Language. So you can find information about it, justlanguage.org. And they're a lot of environmental educators from Atlanta, New York, across the US. And so it was a way for us to like start to change our language around the invasive species rhetoric that's out there because it can very similarly mimic political rhetoric that you see in like the presidential debates talking about people like actually people who don't belong. And there's a sort of correlation with the rise of invasive species science as well as like displacement of like let's say Chinese immigrants per se. So it is interesting. It's been a portal for me just to like reckon, I like a reckoning, I guess, with my relationship with weeds because my job for like a few decades has been really just find the most effective and efficient ways to like remove certain undesirable species from the forest and revegetate things with more desirable plants. So, and and that's really like it's really a value proposition. So you talk about driving down North 30th and like the shade or the aesthetics of the changing colors that we value. And so with invasive species, we often just think that they're taking over and they become overabundant.
Right.
And that's the word I choose to use a lot of times. They're just like not team players, right? So they sort of push out other plants that we want there. So there are but I do think they've been brought over for whatever reasons, like blackberry was brought over because it was like an erosion control. It was good bird habitat because of the berries. It's aesthetically, it was pleasing as well. But we just stopped, many people, I think, stopped using it for its medicinal qualities as well. So we'll always take the berry, like everyone loves those berries. You can make like cobbler and pie out of it, but also the leaves can be used as teas. And the roots are actually can be tinctured as well. And it's very important, from what I understand, for like curing like diarrhea and like kind of gut health and
Same here. Yeah.
yeah.
Gut health. Yeah. Diarrhea.
Uh-huh. Yeah, which some people suffer from, right? So it's very discounted, like that's just that's normal for us. But yeah, I think it can be, yeah, super important for as a drying and toning like tissues.
Yeah, yeah, it's astringent
Hmm.
as they say in the herbal space, which is really cool because there are so many around here, and a lot of people, we're ripping them out, we're burning them, the roots. I mean, I think so many people wage war on the blackberries because they come back easily. In Wisconsin, we have waged our own little situation with some of ours too, but at the same time, I mean, the leaves, the roots, you can use these things, and of course, cobbler, who doesn't like that?
Yeah, and there's so much of it, really. It's one of those ones that's become naturalized, it's super ubiquitous. And so even the fact that it's almost everywhere. And it grows like in really harsh conditions as well. So I think it's like we often think native plants are like adapted to this local environment, but blackberry as well is like very well locally adapted, even to the freeway. The freeway, you see it like up and down the freeways, and it's again providing a service that it's like intercepting all those particulates off those like thousands and thousands of vehicles that pass by, on the freeways anyway.
Let's talk about that for a second,
Mm,
the particulates, because I don't think a lot of people realize, like, I think we all kind of remember back in grade school that we're like, oh, we breathe carbon dioxide
yeah.
out and the plants take the,
Hmm.
carbon dioxide and
Hmm.
turn to oxygen. But I think we forget a lot of how they're also cleaning our air and how they
Oh,
can clean
sure.
the air in the home. They can clean the air in our yard.
Oh, for sure. And then, I mean, we have a few plants. You're not seeing them. I'm gonna
We're looking outside here.
point to them, this podcast, but some video. But there's, a lot of the plants I have in here, the pothos, cleaning the air right now. It's not just the plant doing the work, but the interactions with the soil and the fungi that are in the soils as well. Snake plant right here. I think this one is really known for cleaning the indoor air quality, hopefully.
They're supposed to.
Yeah. So the one I would say kind of moving on from blackberry, which most people think are a menace, they can't get rid of in their yards, to ivy, called English ivy or common ivy, is that one is extensively studied. Like there is science in it from Europe anyway, where it's sort of native in its native range,
Hmm.
and it's used for vertical greening systems. They plant it along freeways, I guess. And it's also in the ginseng, Raeliaceae, so it's in
Hmm.
the ginseng family, so it's like incredibly medicinal as well. So it's really important for your lungs. It's like a bronchodilator, and I think that's actually being made into these like hybrid remedies. Like the pharmaceutical companies are making it into these, remedies that you can find on the shelves. So again, like not something very uncommon for I think for us to see, like at Walgreens or whatever, but I think it's pretty common in Europe.
Huh.
But
I didn't
also
know
as
that.
well, like it's a liana, right? So it'll creep on the ground. And I've walked through so many urban forests where it's just like it can be like knee high, but also it's a liana, so it climbs up and up the trees as well. So I think it's very important and you'll see it along the freeways. I think it's super important along the freeways to be intercepting particulates that would otherwise fly into the neighborhood.
Hmm. So you could, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, ivy, it's growing on
Yeah.
my house, it's growing on my fence, but actually
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of helping I mean, even though, yes, I could argue the damage to the fence in the house, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's helping cleanse the air around your house. So
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
ecosystem or environment around
Yeah.
your house.
Yeah, and even like in the 80s, like NASA studied it as a plant. They would like take up into space to like clean the air, like in like the astronauts' air. It's fascinating. Yeah, it's like, yeah, so if you dig around, so
That's
our
cool.
Google, when in our Google, like our algorithms that how the machine has learned what we're interested in searching, like mine is very much trained. I type in something about ivy and it tells me all the ways to kill it and such. But if you dig deeper into like Google, I really am a fan of like Google Scholar. And you do like a very specific search for like medicinal uses of certain plants that we would often villainize. Sometimes you'll find details about how they're medicinal, or how they're used in their like ancestral ranges.
That's cool. I never knew all that about ivy. I really
Hmm.
didn't. I've actually never used ivy in a patient. So that's also another thing, which probably a lot of people are thinking right now, like, what about poison ivy? How do we
Oh
know how to
yeah.
identify? There's definitely identification things we need
Hmm.
to.
Yeah, I actually don't know about so poison ivy. I feel like it's a Midwest East Coast thing, so I'm a little ignorant about it, but I feel like it's a different family of plants.
It they do
Yeah.
look different and they don't creep up.
Hmm.
They're different, but definitely for folks who are listening thinking poison ivy, we are not recommending that. We are talking about
Yeah.
other species. Thinking more the ones that climb, well, in the forest, yes, on the ground, and then what things you see climbing up, like up a tree or up a
Yeah.
fence or
Yeah.
up a
And
house.
and obviously a lot of many plants are toxic in certain doses, right? So I
Hmm.
think it's dose dependent. Some plants they're not widely used. So you should take care in using every single plant. So I think it is important to like read some books. A couple months ago, I interviewed Natalie Hammerstead, and she just published this book about medicinal plants in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a great visual guide as well. So not just line drawings, but I think more and more, hopefully, there'll be some herbal books coming out that show like really good images along with the text. But also, hopefully, you may have an herbalist living in your hood. So I think it's really important to bring them embrace them as part of the community.
Absolutely. I mean, it just as we think of doctors, I really do think we need to think about how we all can be our own, support in this department because it's time for it.
Hmm.
So, okay, we talk about ivy, we talk about blackberries. What are some of the other ones that you come across and some of the ones you're fighting for to have
Oh,
in
gee.
your
Good one.
in the
Yeah,
parks
I
around
have a
here?
whole list. And I'm a little nervous about this because next week I'm going to the Society for Ecological Restoration conference in Vancouver. And we're going to be talking about this like amongst my peers. And I'm a little nervous the way they're going to take it. So hopefully I'm going to try to call people in a little bit and just talk about different values of these plants. But there are ones that we especially this is the North American conference, but in the Pacific Northwest, there's some that are pretty common, like knotweeds.
Yes, let's talk about knotweed because
Yeah,
that
should
is
I
the
talk about
huge
knotweed?
one, right? It's a huge one right now. Knotweed's popping off because we found it to be antiviral. We found it to be antimicrobial. It's also great for the kidneys. You got to watch the dosage, but people are
Mm.
like hot on knotweed. And if you haven't
Are
heard about
they?
knotweed, it's okay. Yes, in the spaces of working on boosting
Really?
immune system.
Okay.
Yes, knotweed
Nice.
is popular.
Yeah.
It is.
And yeah, obviously my herbalist friends too really talk about like a plant when it shows up in abundance, perhaps there's a reason for it, right? It sort of signals perhaps that we need that plant for whatever reason. And plant populations, year by year, if you go and observe like the plants in your, nearby park or in your neighborhood, like some years they're there, some years they're not. And I mean, can always scientific you can always make scientific reasons why those are there, but there's all these different kinds of sciences, right? There's indigenous science as well, and it's just really important. I think that local knowledge as well, figuring out like trying to figure out what's happening in the hood. So yeah,
Hmm.
and what's the for knotweed, it's really it can really choke out streams. It can really become really overabundant. It can really deprive the soil. It uses a lot of nitrogen. It draws a lot of nitrogen out of the soil, so it can really and nitrogen is one of those like principal constituents that plants use for growth. So in that ways, it's not a big team player in the ecosystem. But
Mhm.
again, it can be it's not like everywhere, but it can be like pretty locally abundant.
Let's tell folks what it looks like, at least in your experience, the knotweeds here that are choking out
Hmm.
streams. And obviously for those of you who are gardeners, having something that's sucking nitrates out of
Yeah,
your ground, that's
right,
not
right.
bueno. So we do have to think about like how can we let it live but move it,
Yeah.
or adjust with it.
Yeah, and that's why I think it can be important to you, like if you don't want it a certain place. A lot of times I think restorationists were like, we want the weeds gone, but it's like we're very good at killing things, but then like replacing them. Like sometimes we're like, yeah, there's bare soil, and it's a win. And I'm
Right.
like, oh my
But that
God, but it's not a win because like you got to replace it with something, right? So they're like stabilizing soils are important. So but yeah, knotweed has the rhizomes go super deep
okay.
and it grows really tall, like a hollow stem that's segmented,
Hmm.
right? So it's in the Polyphilopia is the genus that we
I wouldn't
talk
pull
about
that out of
now.
my butt, but
Yeah.
okay.
And but it also has this like white inflorescence too. That is in a deltoid shaped leaf. They all have deltoid shaped leaves. Often people refer to it as Japanese knotweed, but I
Hmm.
think like most of the knotweed that we see around here is a hybrid. Yeah, so sometimes we actually think that the seeds are actually sterile, so it isn't it isn't established and dispersed via seeds, but it's actually usually by soil movement, right? So somebody digs it up, wants to get rid of it, and then they did like dispose of the soil like improperly and can inadvertently spread it.
Hmm.
Yeah, but the bees love the like knotweed honey, I think is very popular and pretty yummy.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's like rich in, yeah, from what I know, in antioxidants. Yeah, super important.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Notley's hot right now. There's a company called Quicksilver that is that has a formula together for longevity
Mm,
and things of that nature and antimicrobial, mostly antiviral for some reason.
mm,
I don't know all the constituents, so those of you who are like keeping score on that, please don't keep
hmm.
score on that one for me. Go to Quicksilver, you'll see the
Yeah.
product.
Yeah, and so too, in knotweed, it's a noxious weed. So
Yeah.
politically, there's this characterization or identification that it's like a noxious weed, so it's harmful to the ecology, the economy somehow when plants are put on lists
Yeah.
that the state deems like inappropriate to have in our landscapes. So some plants, but like ivy and blackberry, for example, are so ubiquitous and naturalized that they're like very low tier. They're on these tiers, so
Hmm.
very low tiered, so they're not regulated like other ones can be, like milk thistle, right? So I take milk thistle
Yeah.
to support my liver, right, and
Yes.
get rid of cholesterol and some of those low density
So it can
lipoproteins.
help with LDLs. It can help with like liver detox. You got it. You got it. It can help with liver enzymes. Yeah, yeah. And then it just kind of helps clear things a little bit, especially, for those who maybe been drinking a little bit for a little while. Not
Yeah.
saying that's him. But people who are drinking a little bit for days on end, maybe go to Vegas, you come back,
Oh,
get some milk
milk
thistle
thistle. Yeah,
afterwards.
so milk thistle though is a class A noxious weed, so it's regulated. So if you find
You're
it
supposed to.
in the landscape, yeah, you're supposed to remove it. So you're obligated to remove it. So there's always this threat from the state of being fined if you don't remove it. And I think that principally a lot of these plants that are regulated like class A noxious weeds in different states is because usually it's harmful to livestock. And so these noxious weed laws were really adopted early on, like decades ago, just to protect the economy and livestock. But I think most of us live urban, so there's not a lot of livestock roaming around, but it's still like a danger, I guess.
Huh.
Yep. So,
Is it a danger? Okay, this is a dumb question because I can see how livestock would eat the thistle,
mhm.
but like chickens in urban community, if a chicken was to peck after a milk thistle, do you think it'd be a problem?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Me
But
either.
there's
If you
other
guys
plant,
know,
yeah, there's other plants as well. So
let
like
us know.
St. John's wort as well.
Yes.
Again, harmful like in abundance if it's eaten by livestock. Yeah, and who knows where this science came from or if it's like still studied. But it seems like it's almost common knowledge that some of these plants are toxic. But like I said, like in certain doses, many things can be toxic.
Right,
But
right.
St. John's wort, again, just like milk thistle has been used for
Yeah.
eons, like going
Yeah.
back like thousands of years, perhaps, for its like medicinal qualities. And St. John's wort in particular is like antidepressive, right? It's that yellow flower, so it's an aster, so it's associated astrologically with the sun. And yeah, it's very yeah, it's like a power. It has a superpower.
There's one thing I want to say about St. John's wort, just for folks, to kind of get a full, like when we think about detox, we think about milk thistle. St. John's wort, actually, I just learned recently, it helps the third phase of
Hmm.
detox. So for
Oh,
detoxing the liver, then we get the St. John's wort piggybacked on. It can
um,
pull things out of the cells that other things can't. I had no idea. No
interesting.
idea. So I'm gonna share that with y'all now. But the
Yeah.
other cool thing about it though, and not so cool if you're taking pharmaceutical medications, is it does speed up clearance of
Mm.
meds. So it's a contraindicated if you're taking certain medications. So
Mm-hmm.
for those of you who are listening, if you're wanting to detox fully, but you're on pharmaceuticals, what look and see if it's
Mm-hmm.
contraindicated.
That's
There's a
good.
big list. I can't remember it all.
Yeah.
But
And there's a whole
thing.
I have this book back there. I don't know if we want to get it, but it is like there are clinical herbalists as well that spend like potentially, I don't know how much school you've been in, but like thousands and thousands of hours like just studying herbs, and
Yeah.
especially like they can have these things like memorized, just like you can spit out like all this knowledge about like certain aspects of certain plants. Like there's literature to back some of this stuff up, and yeah, people can have it memorized, not just like the interactions, like the touching of the plants and using them locally, but there's like trials that have like, 40 potentially or hundreds, of participants that they tested herbs on.
Grab the book.
Oh,
Grab the book. We'll tell you guys about the book because that kind of stuff is like crucial knowledge, I think, because we're we're trying to figure out how to use herbs in our environment, use herbs in our backyard, maybe we grow them. Knowing what's best for you, but also what may have an interaction is crucial because so many people will come into my office and they'll be taking certain herbs and we'll realize that one of their pharmaceuticals is interacting with their herbs and that's why
mm,
they're not feeling great. And so we got
mm.
to adjust things, which usually is me being like, let's get you off the pharmaceutical, but
Yeah.
that's what happens. So what do we got here? We got
Yeah, the herbal medicine, it's the Commission E monographs, right?
nice.
So there's like
There we
dozens
go.
and dozens of plants that yeah, may or may not be native to this bioregion anyway. But the ones that you might come find like in the drugstore at the health food store
Yeah.
or whatever. So, and this one is a used, I think a used version that I found at the King's Books here
Oh,
in
nice.
Tacoma. But I think it's updated.
Yeah.
And this is just like a little snapshot of like a certain set of plants anyway.
Nice. Yeah. Blumenthal, Goldberg, Brinkman, expanded Commission E monographs, herbal medicine. I could seriously geek on that. We have to take that away from me because what happens is I get easily into that. So we're gonna put that over there for the time being. Otherwise, you guys will lose me for the rest of the podcast. By the way, this is really good. So whoever gifted it to him, good stuff.
Limoncello.
Yeah, I give it a high five. It's
Nice.
delicious. Now, one of the things you mentioned, and it caught my eye, but I didn't quite say anything right in the moment, was the universe kind of knows what kind of plants to put into abundance. And, we can go woo on this. We can go what's in the air. One of the things I noticed this year is that the lilacs bloom twice. I've never seen that in all of my time frame of living of 46 years. Have you ever seen the lilacs bloom twice?
Bloom twice.
I confirmed from a couple folks out here that they saw it too out here. Because they bloomed in May like normal, and then they bloomed again in early September.
Okay.
So let's talk about this weirdness in terms of, different plants showing up at different times.
Right,
Like what's in the environment, what's coming out where what have you seen?
Yeah, I think I mean ecology, we talk about this phenomenon like the phenology of the plants. Hey, the phenology of the plants, right? So there's certain flowering cycles and things. I don't know. I think things flowering twice in a season, like that's kind of the habit of some plants. They're just a superpower. You can cut them and they'll just resprout in abundance, or they'll flower like multiple times, like yarrow, I think can do that as well. Lilacs, I just see them, I usually consider them kind of like an ornamental plant.
They are totally
here, so I don't really know, but maybe, the neighborhoods aren't getting any cooler, so I do feel like the underlying warming that we feel in the world is beneficial to plant production as long as there's soil moisture, right? So like some plants can just can do that photosynthesis thing, like, that you talked about a little earlier, like if they have heat and light and moisture and soil moisture.
So maybe that kind of environment. What about do you think that certain plants come up when there's more toxicity in an area? Like say there's more like smog, more, chemicals in the air, maybe even metals coming down from smelters or in Tacoma we had a smelter, but it's gone now, gone for a long time, but it's in the dirt.
Yeah, this is fascinating. In next month on the podcast, there's this gentleman coming on, is Christopher Brown. He just wrote this book called The Natural History of Empty Lots.
Oh.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So really talking about this, what I call like Tehran, or it's been called Tehran bog, or these like unintentional landscapes, really. Like some of the parks that we manage were never meant to be parks. They're just things that the city inherited because the slope is too steep. You can, some guy couldn't build on it, so the city inherited it or bought it, or it's a wetland again where you can't build on it. So important, it serves an important function now, we think, but they were never meant to be parks. And so, yeah, again, the smelter that loaded a lot of our neighborhoods up with like arsenic here, that's no longer here, was recently that site was essentially like a brownfield, we call it, but then they were able, through a series of, I think, some real estate came in and were able to, put a cap on it and then build it. And that's where you see Point Ruston, where there's like
lots of homes and
property, condos and, all the things that we need, like movie theaters and stuff like that. But there's also now a park. Dune Peninsula is on top of basically a bunch of slag, right? So, but when you see in like a brownfield or an area that's in restoration speak, we talk about land that's degraded, damaged, or destroyed. So either like totally physically altered, or just the soil we've removed the vegetation and like done something with it. Yeah, you often see plants that we call pioneer species, or they're very specifically like they grow in that little niche. So that's where you do find some of these weeds, like blackberry will repopulate those areas, ivy sometimes, St. John's wort. Yeah, a lot of these species that grow up or can grow in what we think are pretty harsh conditions, like even knotweed, it's like in its native range, It grows on like these like high altitude like volcanoes and these like very rough soils, So they
It's
can
impressive.
grow in these like we often think as gardeners we want this like dank, like dark soil to like cultivate the species we want. But yeah, some of these other species they do relatively well on these like what we call like nutrient deprived soils.
So speaking of nutrient deprived soil and the dune park now that we have, and
Mhm.
you being kind of in the realm of checking out what's going on in these places for your position, do you see, you said you've seen certain things coming back. Are there any things you haven't mentioned that have been coming back there that we haven't talked about? Like anything interesting, any finds? Yeah, like what kind of finds? Maybe not even the Dunes Park. What other parks
Mm.
have you found some cool stuff in
Uh,
that's medicinal and useful here in
Oh
Tacoma?
yeah. I mean, I'm getting more familiar. I mean, through CLAT, through the herbalism school, through the herb school. I just call it herb school for short. Like one of the first days last year, we went out and collected Grindelia, right? So
Yeah,
the what do we call it? Gumweed,
yeah, yeah.
right? So I just interesting, just a month ago or so, I collected the seeds and we're going to propagate it. But it comes out when it does pop out as a flower, it has this like very like I think they might be saponins. I don't know. There's white,
Rich.
gooey, and it's gumweed because it's like very sticky. It smells like kind of this balsam smell, I would think.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and it's in the cabinet as well over there, and very good for yeah, like allergies. Again, like a yellow flower. Yeah,
Itchy
probably
eyes.
associated with the sun, itchy eyes. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Grindelia, I mean, Grindelia, yeah, by far allergies.
yeah.
Super
And
cool.
it's a seaside plant. I think I often see it around the Puget Sound. I always thought it was like a seaside plant, and never strays far from like salty environments. But then from anecdotes from other people, I know they see it up into like Idaho,
Oh,
I
wow.
guess.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. It can
Hmm.
be moved. And one of these things we often think that plants just occur because like animals move them there. But people have been moving things around for years and years and years. So canoe culture around here, move plants like, Western red cedar or lots of other berry producing plants or anything that has like a nut is very
Mhm.
like economical and can be moved a long ways and then regrown or you can regrow things from seed or you can regrow things from cuttings. And so it's maybe something, same thing with gumweed.
Maybe. I don't know. It's cool stuff though. Definitely. Yes, proof he does have a tincture. I saw it in there.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm curious at some point to look at all of them there. He's got a bigger stash than me, but I've had to weed mine out. My husband kind of was like, okay,
Yeah,
seriously.
I mean, even in the yard, I mean, there's plants that I have downstairs I haven't used. I should be drinking right now. It's so I don't know, you probably didn't notice it in the yard coming in, but there's oh geez, chickweed in the yard. So
Yeah.
again, my front yard think it's lawn. It kind of looks like lawn, but it's pretty patchy. But there's like tons of chickweed coming up in the yard. So again, it's like showing itself right now. Where we're recording this in end
Hmm.
of October, and
Hmm.
really, it's something we can collect in the spring, in early spring.
Chickweed, mullein, all these things are considered weeds, literally
Hmm.
weeds, and they're amazing for skin. Like if you go to any like website that's herbal and oriented, like Green Goo or any of those, you're gonna find people are making salves and things out of chickweed. Like literally chickweed, mullein, those are like your
Hmm.
two number ones. Plantain, also weed that grows here, really lovely. I had a
Hmm.
lot in my yard and I didn't do anything. It just
Hmm.
showed up.
Yeah, so things we can ingest, we talked about the
Yes.
Oregon grape and the mullein. Some things
Mhm.
are in the yarrow, some things can be used topically as
Yep.
well. So yeah, something I'm not super crafty at, but I've learned a little bit is making salves.
Hmm.
And so everyone is like interested, like, oh, what can I do for dandruff? Or what can I do for X or Y? I'm like, I don't know, it's not my specialty. But I made a few salves out of cooking things down in a crock pot for like 3 days at a time in olive oil, and then mixing it with later on with beeswax or shea butter and making some cool salves out of
So
things.
it's so fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like kitchen, it's so much fun playing with the plants in the kitchen.
Mhm.
And what did you make? What did you put in there? So you said you had the
Mhm.
oil. What were the herbs?
So
What
some
herbs?
things, so the Oregon grapefruit, again, you talked about the
Hmm.
antimicrobial properties, so you can
Hmm.
mix it with like cedar, or herb Robert, again, another weed that's been used,
What's that
by
one look like?
Sir
Because I don't
Robert.
know if I know what
Yeah,
Sir
so
Robert looks
so it's
like.
purple. It's a geranium, so
Oh,
pretty common little geranium leaf.
oh
It's very
yeah,
aromatic, which is a polite way to say it stinks, right? So, but it's also styptic as well. So, it stops bleeding.
yeah,
So also
that's
the
true.
yarrow is something like if you get a cut, and like the other, ooh, last year I was at a class and we were like cutting apples, and and the very last one, like I'm really good at cutting apples like very fast for my son who's but yeah, the very last apple I cut
Superpower.
just like sliced my thumb, and luckily
Oh
we're
no.
at this little urban farm and they had like some yarrow, so I just like chewed it up, make a little poultice, stick it on there. Um but actually, they actually had some mullein as well. I think that actually helped the best because it was still bleeding. It was kind of a deep cut.
Oh,
But yeah,
the
mix some of
things.
these things with like really hard alcohol, like 151 or the
Mhm.
Everclear, which I'd never bought before,
No,
like
oh my
as an
goodness.
herbalist. Yeah, so not. I don't think some people can drink it. I wouldn't advise it, but yeah, used for like topical applications. So you can make like a little yeah, spray out of
That's
it.
right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things we can do. And I think we just lost this art. And I
Hmm.
really think it's important to kind of bring it back for everybody to really understand that we've got stuff in our backyards. All the key is just learning how to identify. And of course,
Hmm.
this podcast, maybe we're gonna have to take it out next time I'm in Tacoma. We'll come back in the spring and we'll do some stuff when things are really starting to pop off and we can
Hmm.
get more. But
But we live in the city, and Tacoma has the lowest canopy cover of all the major Puget Sound cities. So we're hovering around like 20%. So you're looking down like at the Google image, like the imagery of
yeah.
the city, only 20% of the city is covered in green and trees, right?
Oh,
And so some other cities can be like 10% more, like Seattle's hovering around 30%. A place like some more affluent communities, like, or the islands like Mercer Island or Vashon Island could be like around 40 or 50 or 60%. And those are like real, like like you're driving around, you're like walking around, you're in the forest. So the sea's not getting any, like I said, the neighborhood's not getting any cooler. So it's really this balance between these services that the trees provide. So even though it's a weed and it grows like really abundantly, like we're deprived of canopy in the city. So it does shade our house, and it's very important. It's a huge tree.
but something to think about at the same time is having canopy,
Mhm.
having trees. Yes, there's global warming kind of concepts, but there's also just more having I'm more into like the cleaning of the air around my house and trying to help.
Hmm.
If I'm in the backyard, I'm not, getting all the well, in Tacoma, the planes going over really is what we got and we got the military base, we got all kinds of stuff going on. So what kind of things would you look at for folks that are, trying to figure out in their yard what might be something fun to put in the backyard that's really
Mm,
good? Like we talked about ivy and
right.
doing something like that. Obviously that tree's kind of villainized. Would the city like come and if it wasn't grandfathered in a huge tree, if you planted one and someone found it in the city, would they tell you to pull it out?
I mean, people tell me to do a lot of things, but I guess it's not regulated yet. It is a host for spotted lanternfly.
Oh,
So that's why, like on the East Coast, I think people are, yeah, spotted lanternfly is like really there, and like you just be super overabundant, and they do host on this plant. However, spotted lanternfly also hosts and nectars on like 70 different species, so not just tree heaven. So tree heaven is not responsible for spotted lanternfly. But I would say, so I wouldn't recommend like planting some of these things, but when you do find them, like you can nurture them, I think, and you could phase them out over time too. So you could plant different desirable plants or different native plants. I think like there's not a lot of native plant nurseries, I think, in some communities. We
mm,
are blessed, and it just takes some time to like search them out. and you can try different native plants, I think, for one. But yeah, I wouldn't just wholesale like rip things out of the yard that unless they're like really kind of becoming impactful, right?
Makes
So
sense.
like we have lilac. I don't mess around with that. We pulled some out, but we're replacing it with other things. I have some blackberry. There's some blackberry kind of going crazy in the corner too. So I plan to use that. There's a lot of, took out the hedge in the front, which is and replaced it with native plants. So you look around the yard, and yeah, a lot of things people aren't familiar with, but there's a lot of weird native plants in my yard. So yeah, recommend. Yeah, I'm a native plant geek at heart, so
Some great
often
things to
there's a
go to.
native plant society, I think in most states, and
Hmm.
so you can really they're a good resource. Not the
Yeah.
best resource for talking about they like to I think a lot of times native plant societies like to spectate plants and grow them and garden, but probably not the best for herbal
For herbal use.
knowledge. And so that's
Yeah.
why it's important, yeah, to find your local herbalist.
But native plants, I mean, that makes sense. Like, for example, our zone just was changed a couple of years ago, and we're in like 3A or something up in
Mm.
Wisconsin where I'm at. So like I have to have berries that are like negative 40
Oh,
degrees, you know, like Saskatoon berries and things of that nature to be in my area versus, you know, the like a Pacific Northwest
mm-hmm,
blueberry, it's not gonna live. So thinking about like what you can grow in your
mm-hmm,
yard that's either edible, medicinal, or something native to kind of help that somebody's gonna live better because a lot of places, you know, we look at the ornamental or the decorative things, and it would be like me going, "Oh, that cactus is so cool. I want to put that in my front yard," which we all know if we don't live in the desert, it's gonna not go so well. Um, However, there was a house by my old house that had a huge prickly like pear cactus
Prickly
in their
pear.
front yard
Yeah.
here
So
in Washington.
there's a cactus that is, I guess, native. We consider it native, but people probably moved it like years and years, eons ago. That's we call it native to like the San Juan Islands.
Hmm.
So I actually saw some at the native plant nursery out in Gig Harbor a couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
Right. So you can, yeah, in my time, I did spend a little time in Los Angeles, and we had a couple different cacti that we grew as well, and they're really interesting to propagate. Yeah, you can just take like little babies off them. Yeah, I guess it's like I'd consider like asexual reproduction, right? You take little piece cuttings off of them and just stick them in the ground. That's a
Cac
good way to do it.
Cacti are amazing, like prickly pears
Hmm.
and the paddle kind of ones. I don't know what they're called specifically. Aloe is kind of
Hmm.
in not same, but kind of the
Yeah,
same
similar.
consistent. Yeah, similar consistency and all great for like helping your gut lining, ulcers, all that stuff. So there's some fun.
Yeah, the aloe in particular really soothes like really irritated gut linings, right?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, like acid reflux. Even like a lot of people are that are having trouble with just leaky gut.
Hmm.
It can be amazing. So I want to round the podcast out with what the work you're doing, just because I find it fascinating and you've got some stuff coming up, like you mentioned, you got a presentation over
Hmm.
in Vancouver. I I think it's fun to talk about, you know, how we can get people more engaged in their parks, how we can get people more engaged in what's growing in their neighborhood instead of like these flyers. So I remember seeing flyers. I don't even know if it was here, or if I was in Colorado when I was in
Hmm.
Colorado, but it literally was like, if you see this weed, you pick it.
Oh
And
yeah.
then I'm like, well, maybe I'll just use it for some
Yeah.
something. But like thinking of like, how can we get folks more engaged in parks, more engaged in activism to take care of the parks and what's in the parks and what we, you know, in our landscape,
Hmm.
in our communities to have it be healthy and not just all just straight up ornamental, like things
Hmm.
that we can
Hmm.
actually benefit from.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to celebrate. I mean, not everyone wants to go out and just start digging weeds out of the ground and planting trees. Like that's euphemistically, I used to just say that's what I do, like pull weeds and plant trees. And that's true. It's not true. But also taking time to celebrate and learn. Like I said, just slowing down and learning about the plants from using this like different language. This whole fluency around herbalism is new to me. Um, like thinking about certain plants, like even hawthorn, right? So like the flowers and the seeds or the berries are used for different things. Like the flowers are really good for your emotional heart. while the berries in tincture, I guess, or eating them are good for like your, cardiovascular toning and your like physical heart, right? So
Hmm.
I think there's important ways to like just learn about and not to have to like necessarily identify them or learn the Latin names of things. Like sometimes the best times that I have are going out to other ecosystems and just like observing things or seeing things that are new to me where I don't know the names. I'm not like trying to classify them. And I think that's important walks, doing like at Tacoma Tree Foundation here in town. We do a lot of bilingual plant walks as well, or like forest bathing, where you really tap into your intuition and really just enjoy yourselves because there's a lot of trauma and there's a lot of stress in life. So I think just slowing down and caring for yourself in that way is also really important. But then yeah, like taking care of the parks is can be really incredible as well. Just like improving access, like if you're into trails, like improving
Mhm.
access. So making sure people can get in and through the park safely. I feel like we shouldn't discount that either. So because we're like we live in Pacific Northwest around Puget Sound, like very topographically challenged, I think. So a lot of times the quickest way from someone's home to school can be through a park or from school to the bus stop even. We have a few parks like that where yeah, just a little trail can save people like, half an hour of like walking
Yeah,
around
walking.
getting to the bus. So, but then also, yeah, like the increasing biodiversity, right? So I'm interested in biodiversity, within the community, the ethnic diversity within my community, as well as like the plant life, right? So our relationships with plants are important as well. So increasing that biodiversity, and that may be playing that balancing role where we are removing selectively certain plants and doing it with gratitude and asking permission, or leaving some for nature, but then also replacing those plants that otherwise wouldn't make it there if we didn't assist them to be planted there.
Hmm. I think it's important. I think it's important to think about like we think about landscapes and sometimes wanting the most beautiful landscape ever and all these fancy things, but also thinking about how it can benefit us just as much as looking at it, but also how it can give back to us. It's like a fun relationship with your land.
Mhm.
My husband and I set out to create like all edible landscape.
Mm,
And
nice.
so far we've done all right. We got some things we still need to adjust. The other parts of our edible landscape are edible for the deer. So
Hmm.
they've had fun with that.
Yeah, interestingly, yeah, we have deer here in Tacoma. A lot of cities don't have deer, but they munch on certain things. Yeah, and then they leave it. Yeah, I think since we've acquired, yeah, the dogs that live with us, I think they may, like a lot of deer, avoid the house a little bit more. But yeah, they'll chew on some of, yeah, the most prized roses and things like
Roses,
that.
tulips. They like the like shrubbery, like that. I don't know what it's called. I can't think of it. And it's like an evergreen kind of shrubbery, cedar
Mm,
thingies.
mm,
Yes, cedar bush things.
cedars.
Yeah, they cedar bush things, very specific. They eat like as high as they can get their heads on ours. Ours look kind of funny,
Hmm.
but I kind of feel like that's food for them. Apples, they like our apples.
Yeah, and there's all these animals that live on the fringes. Often I'm a plant guy, but I don't think about animals. But
Yeah.
we provide supplement during the winter. Our bird feeders, so we take care of our bird friends that
Hmm.
kind of hang out throughout the whole year. I know there's some of my neighbors have cameras like in the alley or on the front
Oh,
sides. We see coyote. We know there's coyote living amongst us as well. So that can be fairly important to the urban ecosystem. It's part of the
yeah.
urban ecosystem.
Yeah, think about it. All the critters that are in your area. I mean, I know I donate a lot of food to
Hmm.
slugs every year in my garden. So, we just have to think about all the things. All the things. So, Michael, thank you for
Hmm.
hanging out with me and having me come
You're
over.
welcome. Thanks for coming over.
Hey, no problem. I want to hear about we gotta tell folks about the Tree Hugger podcast. We gotta tell
Oh,
them, what you're up to, where they can find you, website, all the
oh,
deals and
right.
all those things. Cause
You
yeah.
can find you can find me on treehuggerpod.com. Pretty much the podcast is available on any podcast platform, I would say, iTunes or yeah, Apple, sorry, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. yeah, anywhere, just beams through your device. Someone asked me the other day if I was still doing my blog. Yeah, and I was like, she's someone from like the older generation. So I was like, yeah, I think actually just like in your phone, just open it up, find it just about anywhere. On the socials too, Triager Pod. And yeah, but the podcast ostensibly really focuses on ecological restoration, but I delve into issues around human health and livelihoods and justice in a warming world.
Awesome. And hey, if you're in Tacoma and you're in a park and you happen to see him hanging out, say hello.
Yeah, I creep around all the urban spaces.
Me too. It's all good. We're all creepers in our own right. All right, everybody. Have a great day, whatever you're doing. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Bye.
Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.